Alrighty, here we go. This is Travis Neville and the Travis Neville podcast. I had an opportunity to talk to Trey Tucker. His business is called Rugged Counseling, ruggedcounseling.com. Really sharp guy. He's very honest, very genuine, straightforward about himself, his life, his practice, what he's doing to help people, how he got there. We had an awesome conversation. This is one of those times where I chose to have some kind of prescribed questions that I wanted to ask the guy, and there's a very simple reason. I want to know the answers. So, I mean, lots of times when you hear me talk to somebody, I'm just off the cuff, like, hey man, just shooting shit like I just met him at a bar or something. But this guy had very specific things that I wanted to know. I'm just so interested in what he does. So I took a bunch of notes, and I wanted to make sure I hit certain questions. So it is going to kind of come off that way, more like an interview than a natural conversation. But he was awesome, super smart guy, like I said, very genuine, very intelligent, very real. I really liked him. I thought he was a good dude. Great conversation. I hope you guys enjoy listening to talk to Trey Tucker from Rugged Counseling. I hope that conversation in some way helps you to get your shit together. Don't worry about that.
But I thought, yeah, I got it. And so I thought, well, the brain's obvious. And then I thought, well, maybe a lightning bolt can signify like a breakthrough or an aha moment. So
I love it, dude. I love it.
There's not much.
So, dude, have you always been a psychotherapist of some sort? Have you always been doing counseling? Is this something that you wanted to do from the very beginning? Is it something that's new to you? Because you seem like so pro, like it's all you've ever done.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I have been, I guess, doing this stuff officially and unofficially for at least as long as I can remember. But it's been probably 10 years that I've been officially a therapist. But the whole reason I got into this stuff was because people from as young as I can remember, probably from middle school, maybe in elementary school, they just tended to open up to me, and I wasn't ever really trying to get them to do it. And I've always enjoyed listening rather than talking more. And I think just over time, I just kind of gotten this rhythm of, well, I like listening. People tend to want to tell me their stories. I'm interested in their stories, and I can ask questions in ways that help them understand things, and maybe I can help them see connections or roots of issues they might not be able to see themselves, because if it's our own life, it's harder for us to see objectively.
Yeah, I say that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you can spend your whole life trying to figure yourself out, but a stranger across the bar can kind of figure out your major malfunction in like 10 minutes. And I don't mean to downplay what you do, but that just speaks to that idea that you're blind to your own stuff lots of times. You really are. It's very true.
Absolutely. I mean, we're so close to it. It's if we're in the forest, we can't zoom out. All we can see are the trees. If we can get somebody else to help us to zoom out, it's a whole lot easier to see our way out.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So so that's why you got into it. Why take the route of social media? I mean, you're successful, your posts are very pro. My guess is you already have a great base of clients. Why social media? I mean, I love it because I get to see what you're up to, and I get to gain from your knowledge. How does that help you? Is that building your business? Is it building your brand? I mean, what does it specifically do for you?
It helps me to help people I would never get a chance to meet. And I think if you talk to a therapist, most therapists, we are addicted to helping people, and it just becomes this obsession. And we get a true high off of it. I don't know, for me especially, and I've talked to other people, we truly feel a rush when somebody else has a breakthrough moment. And so I've always been somebody that I'm not big on making long speeches. I don't have a lot of patience for 30-minute concepts that I've got to really wrap my head around and dig into it and figure it out. So I like the competitive aspect of, okay, how can I take one of those concepts that probably would take 30 minutes to an hour to really fully explain or really understand? How can I whittle that down to what I call the kind of the bare bones Spark Notes version and
Sure.
make it bite sized for somebody to at least take the next step.
Yeah.
The videos are never intended place therapy, but
Right.
if they can at least get somebody from here to here, then they've
Right.
got some momentum and confidence that they can get it the rest of the way.
Momentum, I think, is a huge key. And this is talk from the guys that I talk to. I'm not a professional counselor, but like you, people want to talk to me and that sort of thing. And I think it's the years that I spent as a teacher. You just get in that mode of, hey, yes, I'm here to help you. You know what I mean? And I know when you said that you get a real high out of somebody getting a breakthrough, I knew exactly what you meant. I knew exactly what you meant because it's exactly the same thing as it
Good.
was for me in the classroom. And then now we're doing what I do now. Same thing. When somebody says, wow, dude, I never thought about it that way. And then they put it into play and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's better than drugs. I mean, I haven't really tried any drugs, but you know, it's good stuff. So you mentioned competition. Yeah, so I assume you mean it's a competition with yourself. How can you successfully and effectively get this big concept down into a really succinct, like you said, bite-sized piece that is both not skipping any of the major points and effectively getting across, like you're engaging that individual. And then, you know, is that what you mean when you said the word competitive?
Yeah, exactly. That is, I see the challenge of something that should take a long time to explain, and I want to defeat that challenge. So I want to figure out how do I get the main things across in an understandable way and a hopefully relatable way. And I'm a bottom line kind of guy. I didn't start out as a therapist. I started out in other kind of areas of life like you did, kind of switched over. And so because I bring that mindset in of just give me what I need to know, cut out all the fluff.
Yep.
Then I think that has helped in my process of kind of communicating some of these concepts.
Yeah, for sure. That's good stuff. So when we start talking about the people that you actually work with, we talked about this briefly. Um, I think that this happens a lot when someone is broaching the topic, when they're starting to think about, well, hey man, I think I might need to talk to somebody about this. I think I might need to go into therapy. I think that one of the things that holds people back, and this is a big one, I think particularly with men, is that they think that if they admit there's a thing they need help with, then they are admitting that there's something wholly wrong with them. Like their core, something about them, all of them is cracked, is broken, is not retrievable, and therapy is just a way of admitting that. I think that's pretty common. Is this a thing you've experienced?
It is, I will say though, thankfully, it has really come down a lot over the last few years. Just the prevalence of people talking about mental health. I think obviously things like social media have kind of normalized a lot of these topics, but still there are some guys that they really do have that mindset of, man, if I come and talk about this stuff, that means I'm weak or I'm broken or there's
Yep.
no hope for me. That the kind of
Yep.
thoughts you're talking about. But and I had those as well, and sometimes I still feel those when it's my own stuff. But what I try to remind myself and remind other people is that if let's say I tore my ACL,
Exactly.
I
That's
am
what I
not
say too.
going to just walk around with my knee.
Yep.
You say, okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
we're on the same page. And it's illogical to think, okay, I'm just going to ignore the ACL and keep walking on it and act like everything's fine. I mean, people might think we're literally crazy if we did that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the brain is the same way; it's an equal part of our body. So, I think what I also get later, it's easier to understand that the actual act of asking for help is the thing that takes the courage, and that's
Mm.
what makes you the stronger man. It's a whole lot easier, at least for a while, to just stuff it and act like it doesn't exist because it doesn't take any courage.
Yeah, but it's gonna blow
John
out.
Wayne,
Keep going.
right? It is going to
Yep.
blow up. One of my favorite John Wayne quotes is he said, "Look, courage, it's being scared to death, but saddling up anyway.
Doing it
So
anyway.
without
Yep.
fear, there's no courage." So I tell guys, look, just let's. It is scary. It is going to
Yeah.
be unknown, and so that's the exact thing where courage is required.
Yeah, I heard this quote just last week and I loved it. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to work it into my whole program here, but it was, if you can't get over the fear about a thing, do it scared. You know what I mean? Whatever the thing is, so you're
Yeah.
still scared. So do it.
Oh,
And I agree with you. That's what takes that's where the courage is, man. It doesn't take any courage to do a thing that you're totally confident in. I mean, that doesn't prove anything. But yeah, doing a thing when you're scared to death, I think that is key. So I would, I encourage guys that, a couple of sides to this. First, um, do it this way, and second, work it out a little bit before you go in. But have a narrow scope. If maybe there's just one thing, hey, I lost my job, or hey, my relationship is a little bit rough, or I'm realizing I have some issues with my childhood. Just a one small narrow piece. If you can, is it okay to just roll into a person? And I'm saying this, of course, for the people who are listening, but is it okay to roll into somebody like you and say, hey, listen, man, I just have this one thing I want to work through. I've already figured out exactly what it is. Here's the problem. Here, I'm going to lay it out for you, a little thesis statement. Can I come in with just one little thing, one small, narrow thing? Can I do that?
oh yeah, absolutely. The way I try to let people look at things like the meeting with me or with any therapist, it's I'm coming alongside you in the driver's, sorry, you're the driver's seat. I'm coming alongside you in
Sure.
the passenger seat. You're still the
Nice.
expert on your life. So I really don't care what direction you turn. I'm just along for the ride, pointing out possible ways to turn, but the person I'm meeting with is always in charge. So they can bring up anything that they perceive to be big, to be small, whatever they want. I'm just there and we can roll with it. Now, where I can sort of bring some of my experiences, I can say, okay, well, so here's what's bothering you. And oftentimes the problem isn't really the problem. It's something underneath what we think the problem is. But
Yeah.
no matter where we start, we can always make some progress as long as the person is willing to just be open and talk about stuff that, like you said, it is uncomfortable.
Yeah, what you mentioned about the problem not really being the problem. So I think about myself, and when I was married, that relationship, just like, it was the weirdest thing. I mean, I'd know a ton about it now because I spent a lot of time doing the research and doing the work, of course. But what I realized is I had essentially married my dad. And after we got
Mm.
married, I chose to fix my relationship with my dad. And once I did that, I had no interest in being married anymore. Like, all the problems in my relationship, I was just trying to fix a thing that was really my dad. I assume that's pretty common. Is that what you're talking about with the problem really isn't the problem?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The stuff that we deal with day to day, the stuff that's in our way or struggling for us, that is the symptom, but it's just like the leaf on the tree. We got to get to the root and figure out, okay, what's causing this leaf to be a certain color or whatever the symptom might be.
Yeah.
What you just talked about with your example, there are gaps in us that just don't get filled when they should get filled. And so if we don't go back and tend to those gaps, then yeah, it's going to show up in all kinds of different ways, sometimes ways that we wouldn't ever connect the dots for, at least obviously.
Hmm. Yeah, that's I agree. I hear what you're saying for sure. That's and again, it goes back to what you said earlier. It's so hard to see it in yourself. You can work and read and every self-help book, and you a lot of times you just can't see it. So kind of changing tack here a little bit. Were you an athlete growing up?
Yeah, yeah, still love to play at least, just informal pickup games, whether it's flag football or softball and stuff like that. But yeah, I grew up playing baseball and wrestled a little bit, and yeah, just basically anytime I could get outside and use my body and exercise, I loved it. I wasn't very
Yeah.
successful at it, but but I loved it, and I still love to just move and exercise today.
Me too. It's a daily thing for me. Either it's I'm in the gym or I'm actually physically working. And I sent you a copy of my book, no problem if you haven't read it, but chapter one is physically fit, and I specifically talk about, that's a mental thing for me, for sure. I mean, I'm as vain as the next guy. I like to look good and I like to be capable. I like that. But if I don't have that, mouth breathing, heavy 30 minutes of sweating every day, my mindset isn't right. Like, that to me is some real self-disciplined therapy on its own. It's me choosing to put the positive hormones into my brain, and it's the most consistent thing out of all the things I've ever recommended to people I've talked to, as the way that you can keep yourself happy. I don't know any other way to say it. I wonder if that's a thing. Can you I mean, it's probably not politically correct at all, but you get some dude in there who's obviously, 300 pounds. Are you comfortable enough to say to somebody, you know what, man, if you just started moving around a little bit, you're probably going to start feeling better. Because it's rugged counseling now, now let's put that name to the test. Are you able to do that stuff?
I am able to do it. Yeah. I ask permission first. Hey, can I be blunt? And
Yeah,
almost always they say yes, because they want solutions. They want the fix.
sure.
And yeah, you're exactly right about exercise. There's so much evidence, so much research that's been done. One of
Hmm.
the things, especially with mental health, I'll say I am pro medicine in many circumstances, and I'm also pro exercise. So
Hmm.
there's been much research done about sometimes, and I'd say more than half the cases of anxiety and depression, if somebody exercises for 4 times a week for
Yep.
30 minutes a day, doesn't even
Yep.
be 30 sometimes. It's just what the studies showing. It could be 20, anything to get your blood moving. But what the studies have shown is 4 times, 30 minutes at a time, that actually can mimic the same effects that an anti-anxiety or antidepressant pill can give you. And obviously it's more natural. Instead of bringing something in from the outside,
Yep.
you're teaching your brain to put chemicals out that it needed to be putting out in the first place.
Now, how are they dealing with it, man? When you tell somebody that, is it, I imagine there's probably some some uptake time, like, oh no, this guy's a dick. I don't want to hear this. Or are they taking it on right away? I mean, what's your success rate with that?
Ultimately, they know it. I'm just basically saying what they already know. And truthfully, they're not usually lazy. It's just
Hmm.
that life got so busy that urgent things
Sure.
took over, and exercise is rarely ever urgent. So
Yeah.
the tyranny of the urgent takes over, whether it's work stuff, family stuff, anywhere in between.
Yep.
So, months and months sort of pile up without them realizing it. And then they step on the scale and see the number, or they just feel lethargic. But
Yep.
since they're open to the possibility of it, I say, look, let's not even start with 30 minutes. Let's start with 1 minute. Just do one
Ooh.
minute tomorrow,
Ooh.
and then build it from there.
That's awesome,
So,
man. I mean,
but
just
yeah,
like you
I
said,
think,
keep going.
well, no, keep going. Yeah, finish.
I was just gonna say, man, it's just like your philosophy with your videos, man. Let's get this little tiny bite-sized piece, and we can build from there. Whatever's gonna get momentum going. I love that idea, dude. As you said, it's that first step is the biggest leap. It's tough to people can't get started, but once you get started, you got something going.
Right. It's like, if I looked at this massive mountain that I was considering climbing, if I'm standing back from it and seeing this whole thing, I'm going to get overwhelmed. I'm going to get freaked out. I don't want to climb that mountain. But if I can just focus on, all right, the next step that I need to take toward that mountain,
Mm,
then each little step eventually get to that goal. But we got to
yeah,
break it up into those bite-sized chunks. To go
yeah, man. I
back and
love that
answer though
philosophy.
about some of the reactions,
Yeah,
yeah,
keep going.
uh, some of the reactions though, if I bring up something like exercise or weight loss, they,
Sure.
like I said, they're not only open but they know it, and sometimes they just needed to hear somebody else say it that was objective. That's not somebody that maybe they perceive as sort of always in their
Threat.
life nagging at them.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
truthfully, when they're coming to see me, they're at that point where like, I'm ready for action. They've tried
Yeah.
everything on their own, and
Hmm.
they realize, okay, I'm getting to the point of I'm a little desperate, so I'm willing to hear some harsh feedback and take some action on it.
Yeah, that's good, man. And it's nice that I mean, let's think about our situation here that there's a Trey Tucker there when they are at the end of the rope. You know what I mean? When they need that last step. So what do you do, man, when you're your life isn't free of dips. Your life isn't free of valleys. You've had falls, you've had mistakes, you've been there. What do you do, dude? What do you do when you're going through some stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll be the first to say that my own struggles are one of the biggest things that help me to help people that are dealing with the struggles I've dealt with. So, for example, anxiety is the thing that I tend to struggle with when I struggle. I
Hmm.
think in my experience, people tend to either lean toward anxiety or lean toward depression when they
One
struggle,
way or the
one
other.
way or
I very
another.
much agree. Yep,
And
that's
so,
my experience too.
yeah, so in my own struggles with anxiety, then I had to figure out, okay, what works? Where is the stuff coming from? You know, how do I deal with it? How shouldn't I deal with it? All the different trial and error things. And then that has helped me now to not only help other people, but the biggest thing it does for me is I am regularly checking in with myself. In other words,
Okay.
I've learned to not just live in my head, because, you know, a lot of us guys, we just live from the neck up and we just ignore anything in the body. But
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned is whatever it is, mental health or physical health, if we can learn to literally put the spotlight into our body and start searching for physical sensations that are trying to send us a message, then I
Mm-hmm.
can catch something like anxiety a whole lot quicker. So that's one big thing, is I'm always kind of checking in with myself, but also my self-care habits, I think, are pretty strong, whether it's exercise, nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
sleep, journaling, reading, meditation, prayer, that kind of stuff. I know that if I don't do that stuff, I start to drift toward anxiety. So I'm motivated enough by the discomfort of anxiety to keep up my
Yeah.
self-care for the most part. Now,
Yeah.
I'm in, I'm not consistent, I'm not perfect, obviously, but I've learned the hard way enough to be more consistent, and I'm hoping to keep growing in that.
Yeah, I get anxiety. I certainly have had my bouts with that as well. And the thing that I used to explain it to people, because nobody really gets it, it isn't that because you know it's perfectly normal and human to have things in your life that worry you. I think that's fairly normal. But real anxiety is that the worry's there first, and then you assign it to something that's in front of you. I mean, that's the best way I can explain it to people who, if you've never really felt that, it's like you wake up with it, and then the first thing on your mind, you decide that's the thing that you're worried about. That's the difference from regular, daily, usual, normal anxiety. I mean, in my mind, I mean, that's the way I describe it is, am I on base there? Am I close?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a very accurate depiction of a lot of people's anxiety. So yeah, it's sometimes people experience it more in the racing thoughts, kind of the constant
Sure.
worry about anything that's passing in front of them, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people feel it more activated in their body. And typically,
Mm-hmm.
if people will get in the habit of checking in with their body, they'll actually realize that it starts in the body before it ever
Always.
shows up in their brain.
Yep. Yep.
So then the way out of the anxiety is also through the body. But that's the mistake, is people think they can talk themselves out of anxiety. They really can't until they've dealt
Mm-mm.
with their body first.
Yeah, yeah, you know, you speaking of anxiety, you dropped a post about alcohol the other day, and that's why I reached out to you again. I always watch your stuff, but you had the 2 cups and you talked about the dopamine system. Would you explain that here for my people? Tell me about that, how that works.
Sure, with alcohol and honestly caffeine too. I didn't have time to go into it in that video, but
Okay.
generally, and I'm so dumbing this down. I'm sure you could get a scientist on here, and they could go into this so much better detail.
Not
But
asking a
in
scientist, I'm
my
asking you, Trey.
dumbed down way, that's right. So in my dumbed down way, you've got a certain amount of happy chemicals, like you said.
Right.
Dopamine's one of them, serotonin's
Yep.
another. There are others, but you have
Yep.
basically a certain amount that is sort of allocated for each day.
Hmm.
And when we drink fairly high amounts of alcohol, then the brain has to then borrow tomorrow's supply of those happy chemicals. So that's what makes us feel so good at the moment when we're drunk and whatever.
Hmm.
So all that feels great then, but then so often the day after, we start to feel depressed, we start to feel anxious. It's because we've used up that next day's supply that night before when we were drinking. So,
Yeah.
it's not just the physical effects of the hangover, it's also that our brain doesn't have the chemicals it needs to get us feeling good.
Yeah, there's a term for it. Actually, one of my former students told me about this. It's called the Sunday Scaries, where you're anxious, depressed, whatever it is, and because you drank too much on Saturday night, or maybe Friday and Saturday night. Uh, in my first book, I
Yeah.
have a chapter on drinking moderately, and that's exactly why I said that. I know for me, my brain chemicals are pretty sensitive to that stuff shifting, so I've got to really be careful with stuff like drinking. I've got to, I like to have a beer as much as the next guy. But like you said, how your anxiety will keep your daily habits clean. or cleaner than they normally would be. I'm the same way about the drinking. As much as I'd like to, sometimes really get ripped up and have a great, like it's college again, I stop. I'm like, you know what, this might give me fits for 4 or 5 days, because I'm 46 years old now. So, hangovers aren't gone at noon the next day, and for me, it isn't the physical part. I can deal with that, man. The headaches, whatever. That's no big deal. I'll drink water, but it's the emotional part of the hangover that just, I don't want to deal with it for more than half the week. You're finally starting to feel good on Thursday, and then what do? You have another one. And I feel good. Let's have a couple drinks, and you're back on that same cycle. I did that for a while, and even though you're only drinking a couple times a week, you're never really out of that hangover. And people get in that cycle, and it isn't good, dude. It's not healthy.
Oh yeah, and it can really sneak up on you too. You can
Yeah,
sustain it for a week or two, and then all of a sudden, without realizing it, you're needing the drink to just feel normal again. Not even just to feel
yeah,
good, just to feel normal.
yeah.
That really does become a hard to dig out of.
Yeah, and I think there's psychological pieces of the drinking. Obviously, I can remember my ex-father-in-law. He's a great guy. We got along really well, and he made a comment to me one time, and it really stuck with me. He said that I can't, and he's an alcoholic, man. He's 30 beers a day, every day, and he made the
Mhm.
comment. He's like, I just don't, I can't help it. I don't feel like I want to feel when I'm not drinking until I can't. I don't feel happy. I don't feel all these things that, my life is just better when I've had a bunch of drinks in me. I just feel better. Emotionally, that was his focus, and so I get it, and he's a guy who, it wasn't like some guy that I'd never met. Like I knew him pretty well, and to have him say that, now I understand. Okay, that's what made him do it. It wasn't about, being cool. It wasn't about like, it would just really was to feel good, like to emotionally feel good and be able to loosen up and say the
Yeah,
things he wants to say and tell me he loves me and stuff like that, which he would only do when he was drinking. Uh, so that's got to be tough. I mean,
yeah.
how do you battle with that? Is that a thing you deal with? You deal with alcoholism much in your practice?
I do, and like I said earlier about symptoms and roots, the alcoholism or the any sort of substance use, that's just a symptom. So
Yeah,
I
yeah, for
I
sure.
tend to find that whatever you focus on, you get more of. So if we
Yeah,
focus on, okay, we have to stop drinking, then we focus on the alcohol, and that tends to make the brain think about alcohol more and want it more. Now,
yeah,
I'm not saying we just ignore the alcoholism, but I will check, frequency and duration and whatnot of different use. But what I really want to go to is what's causing it. Like your ex-father-in-law was saying, if I can work with somebody like him who has realized, hey, here's why
yep,
I drink, here's the
hmm,
things I'm going to say and do when I'm drunk that I can't do and say when
yep,
I'm sober, that's where I go. Because I want to see what's blocking what it is that he really wants.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thing. I certainly have been in that situation before, where, yeah, I get it. I thought about that long enough to really understand it, how that stuff works. So what's the most common mistake that people make coming in? I mean, I know you can take the high road, Trey, and you can be like, well, there's no mistakes. You can say whatever you want. There's a sounding board, etc. And that's true. But come on, man, there's a thing that people screw up. They come in there and they do this wrong. Now I'm gonna guess. I'm just gonna guess and tell you it's this. They don't tell you the whole story because they're embarrassed and they don't want you to think ill of them. So that, and not knowing those facts
Bingo.
hurts you. How am I doing? Go on.
Bingo. You nailed it. You nailed it.
Yeah.
So session four, meeting four is when they tell me the real stuff.
Okay.
And those first three, they're kind of feeling me out. They're testing me out, see if I'm going to judge them, scream at them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, so they'll say part of the problem, or they'll say a kind of a minimized version of whatever it is they want to work on. But then oftentimes it's that session four where it's like, okay, here's the real me. And
Yeah.
then that's where we can get somewhere. We didn't totally waste our time in those first three meetings, but we could have gotten to the root a lot faster if they just go ahead and rip the band-aid off.
Yeah. Man, I tell you, I give you a lot of credit that you get that done in 4 sessions. It seems like that would take longer. But you get it done quick. Good for you. The sun's
Yeah,
shining through these trees here, so I apologize for the weird lighting. I just saw that, but yeah, so I'm out in the woods. But yeah, that's it seems so common, man. And I think that's you lying to yourself. I have a chapter in the new book talk about honesty specifically, and that's what I talk about and this is what I counsel people on, all the guys that want to come and talk to me. Hey man, you got to be really honest with yourself about what you need and what you want and what it is that you're looking for. If you can't do that, then you certainly can't do it with your partner. You've got to be able to say, and this is a thing, this is a jam that I'll get into is, I'm really upset about that we haven't had sex in a week. And instead of, I'll get in this mindset of, oh, I can handle it. I'm a tough guy. I'm a man. I don't want to burden her with my problems. I don't want to, but it comes out, it blows out about where she parked her car or where she put her shoes or, what we had for dinner, so that lack of honesty with yourself, I think causes way more problems. You know what I mean? I wonder if that's a thing you run into again, especially with guys.
Absolutely. It's a lack of honesty with ourselves, but what I found usually is it goes back to that hesitancy to even come into a counselor's office in the first place, is that fear that, what does this say about me?
Yeah.
Because if I'm really honest with myself, then I don't know if I'm going to be okay. I don't know if I am too broken to even ever have any hope. Everybody has their own different words to put to, but the real word that describes all that is shame. Shame is the thing that keeps us hiding. Shame, the thing that keeps us putting up this facade, and it's also the thing that keeps us stuck.
Yeah.
But then we can once we have identified the shame, we can identify where that started and rip it out by the roots. But at that point, without the shame, it's a whole lot easier to be honest with yourself and with somebody else.
Yeah, I like that, dude. That ripping it out by the root, that's an attractive concept. I like that. And how do you get with so you figure it out, all right, I'm shameful about this and it's because of the way that my mom treated me or whatever it is. You get to that root. Then what's next, man? Once you figure that out, my guess is just knowing it, that goes a long way to healing it. How do you rip it out by the root? How do you do that?
It absolutely does. Knowing it so many times, it's like this freeing moment. You can literally see their physical body change, like, oh, wow. And then they'll grab their head and like a shock kind of a body language. And so that alone starts them on the right road. So talk about that momentum again, that first step.
Sure. And
then
that high.
Once we can, a little bit of a high, exactly.
Yeah, for you. Yeah.
So then once they feel that, they've got some confidence behind them. And at that point, we can start talking about, okay, in that moment, two things. What meaning did you attach to that moment? And they weren't purposely attaching some sort of meaning. Like, I don't know, for example, like, let's say if you get turned down by a girl in middle school, like that's the event, then you attach it. A meaning gets attached to that event. You aren't purposely doing it, but you might attach some meaning like, well, that must mean that nobody's ever going to want me or something like that. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm never going to let this happen again. I'm going to become the biggest player and get whatever.
Yeah.
So the meaning, and then you identify, okay, what did you need in that moment? And that's sometimes the hardest part of it to figure out, is because we're not really figuring out the human needs that are healthy. We just figure out ways of filling the needs that aren't necessarily healthy ways. But going back to the moments and getting to the root of what did we need then, and also it's probably still getting unmet now.
So that's, man, I'm just going to think about that. I'm not going to ask you, but I'm going to think about that later, that concept, dude, because I love that idea of getting shut down in middle school. I actually talked about that in my first book too. I had a very grandiose scenario that I laid out, and that's what it was. It was a middle school dance, and it was me getting shut down. And anyway, I really want to think that through. Like, what was it that? Well, I suppose it would be, being having a positive reaction. Getting validated. I suppose. I don't know. Yeah, I got to think about that. That's a good one. So how about this, dude? I always say this to people, and a lot of this, dude, Trey, a lot of these questions, man. I'm not a certified therapist at all, but I do counsel a lot of men, and I love bouncing these ideas off you because you're a pro, right? So one of the hardest things that I find for people to do is to really look in that mirror. To really, before they can get to you, they've got to look in the mirror themselves. They've got to honestly look at themselves. Are there, and obviously to the end of being able to truly see, here are my positives and here are my negatives. You got to see them both. Lots of times people are blind to one or both of them, right? What's the key there? How do you get people to, because you eventually they've got to be able to do that. Are you got any pointers on how to get that done? Like how to get them to really truly look at themselves objectively?
Oh yeah. Well, and I'll say this to start. I don't know that it's ever really possible to see ourselves fully objectively. Kind of like we were talking about earlier. We need somebody else to help us see stuff that we can't see.
Oh, that's
But
great. That's great. We can talk
the
about that too. Go
the
ahead.
yeah. But what I never do, I'm speaking metaphorically here, I never drag somebody by the hair in front of the mirror and say, look at yourself. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
again, that goes back to the shame. What I try to do is I try to drill down to one behavior, one habit, something small and bite-sized, kind of back to that
Right.
idea of climbing that mountain. Let's take the next step. If somebody's willing to own a behavior, a thought pattern, anything like that, then that makes them more able to own the next thing and then the next thing. But getting them to
So start
try to
small.
really see their whole self area, start small, because it's
Yeah.
just I don't want to confront all of my flaws and things I want to work on all at
No,
once.
it's
Just get,
overwhelming.
just give me something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it, man. And I think what you were getting at is the partnership piece, and I've said that often too, that's the ultimate mirror. And I think that's a tremendous upside of being in a good partnership is it's not exactly objective, but it's certainly more objective than your own view of yourself. You're seeing what a person that you trust in a good relationship, somebody that you trust, somebody that you love, somebody that cares about you and trusts you and loves you, going to say, hey, this is what you just said sounds like to me. This is what you just did looks like to me. And I think that is awfully courageous too. When you are in a relationship, a good one, it takes a lot of courage to be able to not only look at yourself in the mirror, but then let this person whose opinion of you is so important tell you what they think and be able to take that well. I bounce that idea around a lot, and it seems like it's very complex and it's difficult for people to grasp. Um, Anything that you deal with on that? I mean, how do you get people to understand that piece?
Are you talking about understanding the value of having a partner tell you harsh truths, or what's
Exactly.
concept?
Yep. That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, I think number one, obviously, it takes trust in the fact that this other person has my best interest in mind.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's tantamount to anything
Yeah, it's
else.
number one. Yep.
I'm certainly not going to open up to anybody that's going to be that I don't have full trust that they have my best interest at heart. So
Hmm.
then, second, I've got to have enough of a sense of who I am to know that a critique is not a condemnation of my whole person, my whole
Yeah.
identity. It means
Yeah.
there's this piece inside of me that I can sort of bring out and look at and examine, so that it's not this total rejection of me as a person. So separating what I do from who I am, that's a huge piece of the puzzle of being able to receive feedback from somebody else. So I'm at that point where I'm fairly secure in who I am, so I can
Yeah.
receive criticism fairly well. However,
Hmm.
it still stings. I
Yeah. It
don't
always
I
stings,
don't
man.
I don't ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this: I've gotten in the habit of every, I don't know, roughly 6 months or so, I have an inner circle of people. I don't know, probably
Okay.
I'd say five to seven people, and I literally will say, "All right, look, I need you. I'm begging you to tell me about blind spots that I might not see in myself. Like if you don't tell me, nobody else is going to tell me, and I'm going to just keep staying, annoying or stuck or whatever." So I'll refresh their memory every so often. Just say, "Look, I need you. You got to help me out by telling me stuff that's uncomfortable, because not only is it uncomfortable to receive, you got to remember it's uncomfortable for the other person to
For them to
bring up."
say it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think, Jordan Peterson likes to say, don't ever punish somebody for for giving you a behavior that you want them to give. So it is on you that once you open that door, you don't be a dick in response to it, like, oh, you don't like what I did, you don't like that I'm not vaccinated, you're a jerk, blah, blah, like you got to be able to, all right, cool, I appreciate you saying that. Thanks for taking it, thanks for having the balls to tell me about it, being able to say, hey man, I have your back. I do that same thing, man. You know, I've got a good circle of a close circle of friends. I put a lot of time into them as well. And yeah, I know they're there when I need them. And that's exactly the same thing I'll ask. Bro, am I messing this up? This is the situation as I see it. Am I missing anything here? What do you think, dude? Don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what is, you know?
Yeah. And that,
Yeah.
dude, that is true courage. That's true man stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I talk about that as well. You know, I did a podcast, I mean, really early, a couple of years ago about different forms of therapy, Trey. And one of them, like I talked about, was working out, and one of them was another one was just what we just talked about, having a good circle of people. I often counsel guys that you know, it's on you to um, figure out at least somewhat what your issue is. If you know you're feeling bad, work it out somehow, whether it's, you know, you spend some time by yourself thinking about it in a focused fashion, meditating, whatever it might be, praying, whatever your thing is. And then you go to one of your boys and you work it out, you know, you talk to them, hey man, bounce it around, or with a pro like you. And I'm a big proponent of doing that first and then maybe reporting back to your partner. I think that's one of the specifics of manhood that's key is that, you know, we are burdened in a sense, but also honored with this idea that you've got to be strong all the time, right? And in order to maintain that strength and not look weak, I suppose, you know, you've got to work these things out on your own. Long story short, the opposite of that would be, you know, you come home every night and you're laying all your issues on I guess it could go either direction, your wife or your husband, whichever way, you know, dumping it all on them and expecting them to be your counselor. I think that's too much to ask. I wonder if you see that. Do you ever deal with couples? I guess I should have asked that first.
I do. And what you just said is so common, especially when it's a younger couple or
Sure.
someone is younger who's in a dating or marriage relationship. Because there is this assumption that because this is the closest person to me, because I've let
Yeah.
this person in farther than basically anybody else, then I have the right to use them as my therapist. And that will torpedo a relationship,
Oh,
just
yeah.
torpedo it because they're
Big
not
six.
equipped. Yeah, they
Yeah.
can't handle that burden. It's like putting
Yeah.
500-pound squat bar on somebody
Hmm.
who weighs 80 pounds. It's not realistic.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You know, I watch it just it crushes some people. I like that idea of, hey, you're my everything, but I like to say this too. I mean, you know, I don't know if one person can make another person happy, Trey. You know, I think that you can make somebody smile. You can make somebody, you know, make them happier, but essentially it's on you to make yourself happy. You know, why is nobody talking about that? That's a big accountability piece. Am I way off on that?
You're exactly right. The problem is accountability is uncomfortable, and
Oh, it
I've
sure is.
learned this with some of the videos I've put out. I've put out one recently about basically that concept of it's not about you making me happy in a relationship. It's happiness is an inside job. I've got to be
Yeah.
satisfied and whole and complete in a place to both give and receive in a relationship. And
Hmm.
while that is so true, somebody consuming social media, they don't want to hear that. They want to
Oh, hell
hear
no.
how it's often somebody else's fault and
Yeah,
vent the anger toward them. So I often have to teach that kind of concept more face to face when we have that trust relationship.
sure. Yeah, that's I see it all the time. Again, social media I find to be very frankly, you know, it's a love-hate thing, right? I mean, it's the only way to kind of, like you said, get your kind of brand out there. For me, it's, you know, I'm not as far along as you are, so it's positive in that way. But man, if I get hooked into it, and it's not hard to do, get hooked into 15 minutes of just banging through some TikTok, I don't feel good when I get out of it. I don't, man. I think that all that stuff it's trying to enrage you and upset you. It's the easiest emotion, I think, for a screen to tap into that will continue to keep you rolling. Eyeballs and attention, that's where they get the money. And being outraged is the easiest way to get it. You know, I like to tell people that too. Get off of social media if you can, man.
Oh
It's
yeah.
going to make your life better.
Yeah. Hey brother, you're singing the right song right there. People know that they end up not feeling good after they're finished watching it for any amount of
Mhm.
time, but
Yep.
we still go back to it because of that FOMO, the quick little dopamine
Sure.
hits we get if something's funny, whatever the case may be. Yeah, we want to feel something, so we're good in that moment, but then we know what's coming after we're off of it.
Yeah, that one sucks. If you got one piece of advice, you got somebody who's hurting, and again, somebody's going to be watching my show and they're in a bad spot. Uh, what's the best piece of advice you got for them? What's step one? What's a general, probably going to help them? What would it be?
If we're talking about pain, then I would tell them that they can either just ignore the pain and not be useful to anybody, or they can use the pain to then be useful to somebody else who's going to be dealing with that same pain at some point. So, for example, I've lost both of my parents, lost them fairly young, and
Sorry to
I
hear
could
that, bud.
choose to just thank you, yeah, and I could choose to just keep that to myself and not bring it up. However, what I found is, because I know the pain of losing a dad and a mom, then because I've dealt with that and I actually went through that process instead of just ran away from it, now I can empathize and I can understand, at least to the best of my ability, what somebody else is going through when they lose their dad or mom. So pain is actually an awesome teacher and an awesome gift. We would obviously not choose to go through it, but it gives us a chance to become a hero to somebody else.
Yeah, I love that concept of hero, dude. It's I think often misapplied, but I like that that's a motivator for you. I think that that's a thing that, if you're ever going to be a father or a leader or a coach or a teacher or somebody who's going to be guiding anyone ever, essentially, I think you have to have a pretty well-rounded sense of being a hero. And I like that you said that you're using your downs, your valleys as motivation to get you there. Yeah, dude, hero's a big one for me, man. I don't know how old you are, but I grew up watching Rocky and Rambo, and I get outside of Sylvester Stallone, but you know what I mean, where there's somebody who combats adversity and beats it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that piece has been lost. Now it's just, oh, I'm dealing with a hard thing, so I'm a hero. Well, no, man, heroes win. You know what I mean? Heroes lead, heroes help. I don't know. Is this another case where social media's got me bitter?
No, you're exactly right. I mean, think about any superhero movie or comic book or whatever. The hero doesn't become a hero until he goes through something really challenging and comes out the other side. And so often he comes out the other side wounded, and that those wounds a lot of times make him a greater hero. Think of Iron Man. He had the heart issue, but that was the thing that gave him a lot of the skills he needed. Yeah,
that's key, to be able to take your scars and use them, to take your injuries, and again, right back to your body. We're using the term scar. I mean, that place where you were damaged is now stronger than everything around it. Your mind is meant to work that way too. Go get your shit healed up. I mean, that's always my advice. Well, hey man, we banged out an hour pretty quick. Trey, you're a good dude, man. You're better than I thought you were. A lot of times I talk to people and who they are in their shots, in their clips isn't who they really are, but you are 100% genuine, man. I'm impressed.
Well, I appreciate you, Travis. Thank you for having me on. This is a blast. You've got some awesome topics. So I know you're helping a ton of people.
Oh, not like you, buddy. I hope to maybe be like you one day. What's your t-shirt size, man? I'll send you some swag. I already have your address.
I'll take a large. I'd love a large. Thank you. That'd be awesome.
You got it, buddy. I'll send it your way. Send you some of these dope stickers too. Trey, thanks again, man. Had a great time. I will let you know when this comes out. I'll drop some clips on Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. And you can use them if you want.
Thanks.